Hello everybody, hello mommy, how are you today? Hello everybody, I am here with Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Now guys, it's begin. Which one was it? Wait, oh, why are you not working? Okay, there we go. I forgot which one it was. I can't remember. God damn it, hold on. I have to check one of my VODs. Sorry. Mario Bros. Wonder, so... Mario Bros. Alright, if I can spell right, I put Mario. Okay, so the Rolling most recent one. Fucking do what? Must I have that one point? I'm pretty sure it's the third one, right? God damn it. Okay, it has to be the third one. There we go. Perfect. So how are you today, mommy? Oh, I know why I can barely hear it. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Oh yeah, I'm always Luigi because I love Luigi. Well, it's either that or Yoshi. I like Luigi and Yoshi and Toad actually, but I don't want to play as Toad. You know, I can barely hear the game. What the hell? Wait. Oh, the game might be too quiet. Hold on. Oh, I accidentally did a capture. Anyway, let's go to filters, gain limiter. There we go. There it is. So this makes it loud, but not too loud, you know? Okay, I think that should be good. Oh god, I'm not gonna be good at this anymore. Oh, I could have done something different. Damn it, why did I do that? I'm gonna do this. Hey. Oh, right, yeah. I didn't know I could do that, but okay. Okay, good. Now I know which one I have. My hands feel weird on this controller. I'm so used to using my PlayStation, or not PlayStation 5. Well, yeah, PlayStation 5 controller, you know? Fuck it. Great. Nope. Fuck you too. Damn it. Okay. My bad. We're just surfing. Damn it. You know what? I knew this was gonna happen. I think I'm going too fast, because it has been a while since I last played this game, so... I don't know, and also, I'm holding Y to run, which I'm used to doing, you know? Oh, it kept it. Okay, cool. Wait, what's up there? I didn't see that before. Oh. Oh, it's one up. Okay, cool, whatever. I mean, it's cool that I got one up. Even though I was like two by now, you know? What did I just fucking say? Oh god. Ooh. Oh, they're babies. I didn't even notice that. Why is it that Y is like, well, Y is to run, right? Like, this is walking normally and this is holding Y, you know? This one I don't like a lot, but I'll deal with it, you know? The only reason I don't like it is because it doesn't do, well, it does do damage for a certain, oh shit. It basically just makes them blow up basically into a bubble and stuff. Not like blow up, like, man, last night was fun. I'm happy about last night. What? Where's the point? Oh wait, no, I don't want to go down there. I thought I did it first and then I was like, no, because I'll die. Oh yeah. Oh no, I killed the baby. Oh shit. What? Oh, for fuck's sake, I'm stupid, okay. I get it now. I get it. Nobody's stupid me. Oh shit. Okay, you know what? I'll try this. Nope, doesn't work. Okay. That's stupid as shit. Okay, gotta play this level over again. Oh wait. Oh, I didn't get anything. I wonder what Jack is playing right now. Sorry, hold on. I'm not gonna lurk on the stream even because it'll distract me. But I wanna see what they're playing for. Oh, okay, nice. Sorry, distract me. That's all. Let's try this again. Wait, did I not? Was that? Okay. I didn't do it right. Great. No. Give. I must be missing something, right? Other than the obvious. I knew it was gonna fucking have to do it. Oh, there was a one up there, that's right. Oh, I was like, there's nothing up there, but no, there is. Damn it! There we go. Why can't oh, I have to pause to see that. Okay. Okay. Anyway, let's go. I always that looks weird to me. I don't know why. It looks cute though, the pink cat, you know. Yeah, I'm trying to... I fuck 1, 2, 3. Aw, son of a bitch. I thought that was gonna be something that I needed or something. I don't know. Maybe I should. No, wait. Oh, fuck. Fuck. Oh, wait. No, those just fall, right? Yeah, those just fall. This is the one that I need to... No! Well, oh, wait. My checkpoint's right here, so... It's not even a speedrun thing, I don't think. Just always running. It's just something that I do. In, like the 2D side-scrolling fucking Mario games, you know? It's really wild to do that. Let's put it 1 out. 1, 2, 3. Oh, there it goes. Oh, I already have one, so it's just oh, okay, that's fine, I guess. Okay, I could just jump. Oh, I was so scared for a second. I was like, no, I can't go any further. Oh, okay. There we go. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. I need to get that. Oh, I thought it was gonna fuck something up or something. Oh shit, ah! That's not what I wanted. I mean, it's pretty hard to remember everything of this. Oh, you son of a bitch. Wait, hold on. Right, I have to be very careful. Maybe I should just bounce between 2 of them for a bit, you know? Damn it. What? Fuck it. Whoa. Son of a bitch, really? Oh wait, hold on. Before I try to... Nope. God damn it! I I don't remember ever having a problem with this game when I first played it, but then again, I do have uh, a neurological problem, MS, multiple sclerosis. God damn it! Okay, sorry. What's that I wanted to do? Oh yeah, I wanted to check my channel point redeems. See if okay, that one's still good. So I think it's 20 because I want to be 40. So let's see. Ooh, I don't have those ones still. Okay, hold on. Moderator. Uh, mm, um, there's 100, right? I think there's 100 or something. Yeah, that one was 100. Hug. Should put them. Yeah, I'll put that one on. Fuck it. Whoops. Whoops. So on right here, and then click on this again. Hugs just are you. Okay, good. Perfect. Everything is there. Okay, sorry about that. Now I have to go out of jump for some reason. Whoops. Whoops. Oh god. There we go. Oh. Beginners. Wait, no, I have all the purple points. Okay, but I'm going the right way, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. Yay, I did it! Let's sneeze this ad break. Because friggin'. I did it. It's one of those things you don't, like, specifically have to get the double flag, but it's one of those things you want to get the double flag, you know? Let's see. Hold on a sec. One second. So last night I did say that I went to an event, right? Because last night I went to an event, an ABDL event in Boston. It was really fun. I met Carmen in the game, who, if you haven't seen them in chat or whatever, they're also streamers. They're really cool. And mm, there were a lot of pups there compared to when I first played. Or first went there. And just oh no, this is my second one. Okay, yeah. And I thought that was pretty cool. There were a lot of cute little guys there. Well, look, basically, when people think ABDL, sometimes they think, oh, they're not inclusive whatsoever, or like the worst part of anything. And it's like, no, actually, you should probably learn to meet a few of them. And I'm not just basing this off me, you know? Wait, I did this one? Because everybody was accepting of everybody else and just like having a grand old time. And I bring up the pups for one reason and one reason only. It's because I was going to go, I was going to leave, you know, and all of a sudden all you hear is the group go, you know, and it's like, oh, the group howl, and then I was talking with somebody there, and it's so, oh, somebody started a howl. And I thought, I literally told somebody that I was talking to, oh, somebody started a howl, you know, because I think that's a Zootopia reference or whatever. There were a lot of cuties there, a lot more pups than like just ABDL as well. But I was not like it didn't hinder my experience, you know. And it was the first time. Oh, fuck. It was the first time that my aunt was there, or at one. You know, I've gone to two events. One of them was actually one of these ones before. This is my second time going to this event in Boston. It's called Diapers After Dark. It was really fun. And Tourmaline is just such a nice person. I wonder if they're watching. They're probably not watching. But I was like, oh, you know, they're very cute too. They are, let me tell you, they are very cute. They may not show their face. I don't show their face for, they don't want that, you know? Wanted to get full back up. Okay. But yeah, it was fun. I got to hang out with Tourmaline because, like, we were both going to it or whatever, you know? I thought it was pretty neat. You know what, fine, fuck it. I may be in a wet pink Megamax, shut up. Where do I go now? Wait, did I beat the game already, or am I going crazy? Anyway, so it was fun. I really enjoyed it. My aunt enjoyed it too. There were a lot of nice people there. My aunt is old. Well, I mean, hold on, let me explain. She's old but very accepting of other people. So like, there were pups there. She didn't mind, you know. There were a lot of people in diapers just walking around in diapers and maybe a shirt or like latex gear, like a harness or something. It was really fun. I liked it. And then there was, oh, she was wearing a black corset over, which is kind of stupid, but also she was trying to be like freaky, you know, not freaky, but you know what I mean. She had black knee-high heels on, She had her hair slicked back a bit. But if you want to see the picture we have of me before we even got there, you know what? Fuck it. Hold on, I think I can put it here. It should be fine. There's no like visible anything. Hold on, let me find it real quick. It was really fun to be there, you know? She had a blast because she's very outgoing compared to me. I've had I think I made at least one friend. Hold on a second, guys. God damn it. Okay, sorry, my mom came in. But yeah, we had a great time. She met somebody who they hit it off immediately, not like sexually, but you know. They were, I think, oh, and then I made a friend with their littles. I think I did. I'm pretty sure I did. They're like little boys from Iceland, which is really neat. Let me find it real quick in my PC. Oh, this is the right one. Yeah, it is. Oh, shit. Hold on. It's very big. It is way too big. How do I... Oh, what's up? And yes, I am 6'2" compared to her like 5', you know? This is what I wore compared to what she wore. Crazy, I know. But look at it. She had a lot of fun. People complimented her. People complimented my shirt. You know, all that stuff. It was very, very fun. And just like, meeting Tourmaline was fun in person. Have a selfie with her. You know what? I was gonna put the censored version up, but I'm not gonna put either up because I don't know how she'd feel about it, you know? But yeah, I had a pretty good freaking time. Let me see. There was somebody I met at the first time I went that I didn't realize I met there before. But I said, hey, how are you and stuff, and they're like, hey, it's been a while since I saw you here, you know? And then I'm like, oh, you're that guy, okay. And I barked a little, they barked a little, like I went, you know? And then, the other guy that became friends with my aunt is like, he's a pretty cool dude. I talked to him a bit because his little boy, lost his passing. And it's because it was on the floor over by where I was sitting. And Tourmaline was leaving with somebody, you know? Somebody that they went with, you know?
What you gonna pick?
Oh, actually, hold on. Let me do this. Yeah, alright. And they noticed it and they asked if it was mine, and I knew it wasn't, you know? Fuck. Fuck. guy. But it was like I was more open than I was when I first went to one of these events. Because I think I was more comfortable because I kind of knew what was coming, you know? Kind of knew. Should I even bother with this game? Or this level, I should say. No. What? Oh, okay. Damn it. I'm not even gonna 100% this level and I know it. You know what, fuck it. You win some, you lose some. As long as I get one or two. Right here. Damn it. Okay, whatever the fuck you do. Okay, anyway. Let's try this again. I don't know why, I just love this one more than the other ones. I mean, the dig one is pretty interesting, but not the greatest, you know? Oh, yeah. I wish I could think of other things to say, but I can't at the moment for some reason. But it was very fun, I liked it. Sorry, sorry, I got... No, I know. It's giving me repeat notifications. Sorry, I got distracted by somebody. Why am I thinking Ken Jennings? Whoops. It's not Ken Jennings. What was his name? Conroy, that's what it was. Yeah. Sorry, I got some texts and stuff. It was flustering, I guess. What the fuck you do? Fuck you. I should pause and see that to the next thing, you know, because I need to do that. Sorry, somebody texted me who was there yesterday and I thought to go past the thing. You know, now that I think of it, there were a lot of well, not buff dudes, but some pretty muscular guys there. And also people with tattoos. With one of the, oh, I get it. One of the people with tattoos actually is messaging me right now and stuff, and they had they have a, a sleeve, and right
Oh yeah!
around here, you know, on the back of the shoulder blade, they have a Joker. Not just any Joker, the animated series Mark Hamill Joker. And they have a Batman with a bat symbol right around here on the other side probably. And it was just like, what was it, Kevin Conroy Batman and a Batman symbol, you know? Oh, sorry. I also saw somebody with a Stitch tattoo on their arm. And like, because I had a Stitch plushie out, I was holding it and stuff. They're like, oh cool, you have a Stitch too or whatever? And, or you have a Stitch? I have a Stitch tattoo, and I looked at it and I was like, no way, and it's such a good Stitch tattoo. Oh, hold on. Sorry, distractions. Yeah, no. gonna be distracted for a bit. I am so sorry, everyone. Sorry about this. I'm just like, I need to find. Sorry, I'm doing a second. Okay, sorry about that. Ferox, hi, how are you today? Oh yeah, I left your server because I was cleaning up my server list. I think I left your server. If I did, I'm sorry. I can join back eventually. But I just have so many servers that I don't go on. I was just like, you know what? I need to clean this up a bit. I saw yours and was debating on it, but I decided to leave if I did leave, you know? How are you today, Ferox? Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, anyway. Wait, hold on. Damn it. Okay, I did that wrong, whatever. I think that was like a secret area, that's why they were just flying there, you know? Ah! Oh, that scared me a little. I was like, what the? Sorry, I'm happily distracted right now. By happily distracted, I mean I'm talking to someone that I'm not friends with. I'm happy about that. Somebody I met IRL too. Oh, fuck. Oh, well, shit. Whatever. Fuck you two, game. Well, not actually, but you know. I'm so screwed at this height. No, actually, No, because I need that. What's this? Oh, I don't want invisibility. That would fuck me up. Censored. Items, okay. Auto. I don't want an auto super stream. You know what? You know what? I'll try it because if I don't, I'll be small and you know. Sorry, I'm getting really badly distracted. Ah, fair. Why do I get so distracted? No, I think it's my own doing. Like, it's not even like other people at this point. It's basically me, you know? Getting distracted like badly this time. Okay, anyway, do that. Anyway, see if I can do it this time. Knock on wood. Know what I mean by yeah. Hold on. I didn't see that. I'm sorry. Okay, let's see. I'm brother. Your fake typing message. There's says that 100% back in roll, but oh, I didn't see that. Oh, a happy birthday, frogs, I'm guessing? What's going on, what was it you said, next Wednesday? Yeah, next Wednesday, what's going on? Damn it, I knew this was gonna fucking happen. Alright, I don't know. Oh, I know, no, you're not. Oh no, that's how I got it. Yeah, I thought so. Holy shit. Come on now, I will get chat in a second. Okay, oh. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it is your birthday next week. Okay, that's good to know. Oh, fuck. I forgot. I forgot I didn't have the hat thing. The hat glide thing. Nope. What's that? It's flipped up. Okay. I want the parachute cap. No, this wasn't halfway, was it? Well, no, it was halfway, but not like way there more, you know? But you know, well, at least fuck. At least I was able to say happy birthday without, like, forgetting about it, you know? Right, it is your birthday. Oh, okay, it is. Okay, next Wednesday. So, I'm gonna put that in my calendar, so you know. So next Wednesday is the 19th, right? Hold on. Birthday major album. Um, the 12th? Wait, did I look this wrong? Oh, you said next week. Okay, you mean later this week. Did I read something wrong? Yeah, you said next Wednesday, by the way, which is the 18th. Oh, okay. Do you mean like this coming up Wednesday? Do you mean? Repeat. There we go. Now it's on there. It's okay. Don't worry. It's just what fun. I'm just a dumb baby anyway. It doesn't matter, you know. I'm gonna get confused a lot of times. Sorry about that. If oh, fair. Well, I mean, you're going to work. Are you sure you want to be puppy branch? Nope. Let's fuck that up. But yeah, I'm happy you told me, by the way. Because if you didn't, I probably wouldn't have known. Like, Shrox, you think of me as a friend, right? Yeah. I usually, because I wanted to be sure, you know. But usually I try to say happy birthday to all my friends. I have a lot of my friends' birthdays in my calendar, you know. Why the fuck? Oh, that's why. Cookie catch. Oh! That's what I was supposed to do! I don't remember ever having to do that before. Whoops. there you go. Oh, I'm right at the end, okay. Motherfucker. My bad. My bad. No, you don't. Oh, that was my bad. Again. Oh! I've played this game in my free time already before. Like, I played all the levels, but it's been a while since I've actually streamed it. Like, quite a while since I last streamed it, and just... Do you know about that, Ferox, that I have MS? Like, newly diagnosed MS? And this was a recent diagnosis. So, like... I don't have medication yet for it, but I'm gonna... once a month, I think, with the injections or something. Whoops. Don't want to do that. Okay, maybe I do. Yeah, which you haven't been in streams lately, but hold on, I'm gonna show you something real quick. Just real quick, nothing too okay. But this right here is a controller I've been using for like every game I've played or been playing lately on stream. And if there is, like, control support, like, there was a game, what was it? No, I played a game on, a browser game, and I found something called Anti-Micro X, which allows you, hold on, what's over here? Is this something over here? Nope, okay. Which allows you to set keyboard buttons to your controller, And I played 2 different games that day, which was recent. I think it was in the last 2 streams or something. But what was it I played? I played Block Stores, if you remember what that is, I hope you remember what that is, or you should be old enough to, maybe older, I don't know. But it was like, not a flash game, because you can still find it on like, cool enough games like this or something, No, you don't. I think I put it on coolmathgames.com, if I remember correctly, because it was like the first one that popped up. Yeah. That scared me. And then I played another game on Armor Games, I think? Something like that. Called Air, like Air to the Throne type shit, Like that's how it's spelled. I wonder where how I started using that as a word. Because, like, or a saying, because not all the time will I usually have said, like, type shit, But I think it's because it brought up on the food costume. Oh, you don't? Yeah. Sam! Who said we're friends now? No, I'm just kidding. Today. Oh no, I am supposed to go that way. I think my least favorite levels in this game are the Kaizo-like levels. And since I have MS, who knows how good that'll be when playing it, you know?
Yo-ho! Yippee!
Sorry, I'm looking at stuff real quick. Okay, sorry about that. Yes, hello. Oh, thank you for the 1-up. Oh, I thought it was back up to 50 for some reason.
Everyone! Someone's here to save you!
Yeah, I thought so. Well, I did beat them in my free time, but like, it's Kaizo like, it's not exactly Kaizo, but if you've seen those levels before on here, like, they're like, pseudo Kaizo, I guess, you know? I was wondering what was going on. I forgot that I was gonna make myself on shit. Hold on, let me see. But now we're 15. Oh, it's jump, yeah. What the fuck am I doing? Just gonna get imaginary picture bullets. I was gonna do something. Notifications to do. Really sorry for that. Okay. Oh, it's 10:52. Okay, I should be fine. Should get a thing. get snack or something. We'll figure it out eventually, you know? What? Oh, I know what I'm gonna get. Hold on, I'll be right back. Sorry about not going to the VOD screen, by the way. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Should I put YouTube on in the background? Also. Okay, how do I save again? Yes, save. Okay. Wait, what's this? Oh, it's a K. You know, fuck you. I'm not going to do the KO arenas. They're very kind of confusing. I'll get the weekly race though. Those can be quote unquote easy. Knock on wood. Fuck. What? Oh, that's how that happened. It happened again. Yeah. That was on purpose that time. Hmm? It's not what I want. Actually, I could. Maybe. Oh.
Wow, sweet race.
Who the fuck was running faster than me right then? Oh shit.
Wow, sweet race. Great stride.
Fuck you, Wiggly. No, I don't. You lied to me. Well, yeah, fuck you too. I thought something else was gonna happen. You know what? Fuck it.
Wow, sweet race.
Damn it.
Great stride.
What the fuck you do, Wiggly? Bring it. Yay, I did it! Okay, there were a few close calls there, though. the long cigarette. Fuck! One. Let's look this up, right? Oh, I have an idea. Thank you for the follow, Dr. Melsky. How are you today? May I ask how you found me? Let's see in a second. Right, how would I do this? Actions. Let's see. Commands. Alt not registered. Okay, let's see. I guess we'll find out if that works better. Okay, anyway. Let's go back to this. It's just trying to fix something, you know? So yeah, sorry if you were an ad. What was it? Fuck. Why can't I find it in the chat? Oh, Dr. Melski. There we go. So if you're on ad, how'd you find me? Tag of some sort, or looking through the streamers that are playing this game currently, you know? You don't need to say what tag either, you know? If it was for a tag. Unless you're okay with it, you know? On control. Perfect. Yeah, now I don't want to do the KO arena. So hopefully I don't need to do the KO arena basically, you know? Wait, can I skip that? I wish I knew if I could skip that. What was I doing? The fuck was I doing? Hold on a second. What was I doing? I was doing that. What was I doing now? The fuck was I doing now? Out of all times of fucking shit. Oh, okay, let's figure this out, you know? Yeah, it's good so far. I'm totally not using it today. What are you talking about?
All guests are required to
Totally not in it. But still, you know, it's definitely not what's happening. Totally.
Whoa!
That was a weird level.
Oh
You know,
yeah!
it wasn't technically a level, you know? I mean, look, see, it says in the pinned message that I'm definitely not in the wet pink Megamax, so you have to believe it, right? I mean, there's a pinned message.
Here we go! Oh,
I
wow!
think I have an issue with this one. Low battery, fuck you. Sorry, not you, but fuck, fuck the controller, or whatever, something like that. Is it charging now? I don't think it's charging. Charge. Hopefully. Let's check. Controls. Yeah, it's charging. Okay, good. That's not what I wanted. I wanted this. What? Like that. Damn it. Oh, if I remember correctly, one of those is somewhere that I need to fall under or something, no? Okay, maybe not. Whoops. Damn it. Please go back to getting another one of those. Oh, wait, I didn't need to go back, but I did. I'm pretty sure I should be able to do that, but whatever. Oh, wait, if I... Okay. What? Away? I guess that kind of makes sense. Really? For Daisy to do this? How the heck do I... Oh, I know how to get up there. Hold on. Give me that. Thank you. Shit. Oh, wait. Can't I do... No, I can't do that like that. Anyway. I can do that. And then pick that. Oh, I know what I was doing wrong there. Fucking shit. Okay, anyway. Damn it. Well, you know, it's fine. I wonder if what that deleted message was. Yep, that's what I thought. Anatomical position. What? What kind of name is that? Well, I mean, I know it's a storm or something, you know, but there we go. Let me try to do this. Wait, can we? No, is it nothing there? Fuck. Am I able to? Real quick. No, okay, not like that. I feel like I'm missing something. No, not that. Wait, what else? Nope. Where can this guy? Oh wait, that has to be. Hold on. Why is there one ball there though, you know? Makes no sense. You know, like if I'm not supposed to get it up here or something? Oh, I was supposed to get it over there. Okay.
Ouija time!
Figured it out. I am that. Yeah, cool. Ugh.
Alright!
Can't go there yet. It says floating
Here we
hydrant break.
go!
Well, before I do anything, I'm gonna go here just to check if it's still charging because the light is still blinking. Okay, good.
Go for it!
Oh, I forgot what the floating hydrant was.
Hop, hop, hop! Wee-hee!
Fuck,
Ho-ho-ho-ho! Go for it!
I didn't cross it enough. Fuck. How's that not working? Yeah, I should go like this.
Oh!
Fuck!
Wah!
Hi, Jade!
Go for it!
What's up? What happened? What did I do? What's going on?
You can do this!
Fuck.
Ho-ho-ho-ho!
No,
Go
no
for
pooping.
it!
I thought I did get pooped earlier. Or yesterday, but somebody's plushie that's just cute and also nice.
Oh! So nice! Ready to ride?
At that point, I don't care. As long as I get to keep that, you know? Nope, I don't keep it. Okay.
Ready to ride?
Oh, fuck you, fire plant. Oh,
Thank you for riding with us. Yeah!
yeah. So, Jade, what's up with the angry gun? What did I do wrong?
Bye-bye! Yippee!
No. Why would I want you to wear that bad? It's not helpful. That is to me, it's not helpful.
Yahoo!
Rumbas! Where the rumbas rule. No, it's not different. Son of a bitch. Oh, you son of a... Oh, wait. That's right. I can do that. shit. I'm not playing this level over again. This
Thing looks
level's not worth it.
unstable. You gotta push it.
Or maybe it is worth it a little, but I don't know. Fucking... Thank you. Now I can go back. I thought I could go back, but I am stupid apparently. Okay, where I have to go back. No, it does very much matter. Son of a bitch. Fucking... Actually, I could do this, right? Yep. There we go. Oh shit! Fuck! I pressed the wrong button. Yeah, great. Fucking Oh, that's fucking fantastic. Oh, that's also fucking fantastic. Okay. I can deal with that, I guess. Okay. Oh. I forgot that well, I didn't think I'd keep it. I didn't forget. I just wasn't sure I would keep it. Oh, hey. Okay, that's kind of cool. I don't remember doing this before.
Roll, roll, roll! Go, go, go!
Fuck! I wasn't paying attention. I was just rolling. I was just having a grand old fucking time. That's right, I have to do whatever. What the fuck you doing? Come on, get over here. I like the blowing sound for some reason that it does whenever you like go through things.
Go, go, go! Roll, roll, roll!
Fuck!
Oh, no!
I can do this. I can definitely do this, right? Dang it. No, it doesn't matter where that. Oh, oh, goodbye, goodbye. No! Isn't my might be one of the best ones I've seen and or played, you know? Especially because it sounds like Born Prince.
Roll, roll, roll! Go, go, go! Roll, roll, roll! Go, go, go! Easy time!
I can really turn that off with them talking and stuff, you know? Or the flower talk or whatever. I'm just trying for it. Oh, and I can't get. Oh wait, can I? Come on. Yeah, I can. Yay! I got the top.
Yo-ho! Yippee!
Okay, sorry, I am way too distracted today, apparently, even though I up investors to the max recently.
Here we go!
Oh, why am I doing this level? That's gonna be stupid to me. Actually, hold on, let me go to that review. Let's find my uptime. Now we're in 56. That's it? I forgot about this. Come on. Damn it. No! Okay.
Hey!
Oh wait, yeah. Oh. Come on, help us out. No, I can't get up there. Why? What pocket? No. Just go. Wait, what? No, I didn't want exit course. Okay. Let's see who's live right now. Oh, Jack was live. I wonder if there's anyone live right now. Oh, Jackal should be live. Okay, there's only two other people that are part of the team that are live. Who's this guy? Oh, I don't feel good. Okay. I have an idea of what I'm doing. Okay, today's gonna be a different kind of raid message. How do I spell her name? Did I say he before? Fuck, that's stupid. Oh, Woof, you're here! No, I was just gonna wait out. Oh, it is? What do you, is it really that muffled? Hold on. Is it really muffled? Or sure was it just me? Oh, okay, that's weird. Okay, I was going to raid out to somebody, but oh, it is? Oh, I am not surprised. I had to turn it up a little. Hold on. Limiter. How's this? Does this sound better? It should be louder. Hello, Luna! Damn, I was just gonna... Okay. Because I want to be able to hear the game, you know, I had to make it a little bit louder before. Oh, I wanted to raid out, but now people are here. So, you know what? I have an idea. Well, I mean, there's 2 people here. Luna, are you okay with joining me for the raid? I have an idea for a raid message, so it's not gonna be the usual raid message that I have. But yeah, if everybody can join me for a raid... Oh wait, hold on. Control. So yeah. That's fair, Luna. So if everybody can join me for raid, that'd be greatly appreciated. If you can't, however, that's okay too. Hold on. I'm going crazy right now. We're gonna do a custom raid message today. And we're gonna use that message, so please copy out that message. /raid. We're gonna raid Base Jackal. Oh, if I can fucking spell right. Hold on, I'm trying my hardest here, guys. I forgot an I, apparently. But yeah, if everybody can copy out that message, that would be greatly appreciated. If you can't, however, that's okay too. We're gonna raid Base Jackal. So please copy out this raid message, custom, just now made. So if everybody can join me for a raid, that would be greatly appreciated. If you can't, however, that's okay too. I hope you all enjoyed the stream. I hope to see you all next time, and I hope you all have a great day and continue to have a great day. Let's raid. Now, thank you all for joining. Hold on, I think I missed something. Okay, no, thank you.